Trust me, if you can address these 4 things, you are going to see dramatic improvements in your success rate. What's going on YouTube, it's Jason, and in this video, we are going to be discussing why New Year's resolutions fail. Now, there's a crazy stat out there, like 80% of all New Year's resolutions fail by February, 4 weeks into the year. Now, this is obviously quite disheartening for a lot of people, and their solution is, well, why just not set goals? You know, that way you can avoid disappointment. But I think that's nonsense. If you go to your boss at work and you tell them that at the start of the year you don't want to set any goals, they'll tell you where to go, because they'll tell you something like, most of the people that don't set goals don't end up achieving anything. In almost a decade as a coach, I've helped hundreds of people achieve their New Year's resolutions, and I've seen many people fail. I myself have failed a few times, and after careful reflection, I realized that in almost every one of those failures, there are 4 themes that are present. The first thing is that although it's a new year, it is still the same old you if you're approaching things the same way. People have this idea as though like 24 hours after New Year's Eve, you magically transform into this new person and you have this new beginning. But the reality is, if it's the same old you approaching things the same old way, and you failed in previous years, chances are you're probably going to fail again this year. And that's because doing the same thing and expecting a different result is insanity. The $1 million question which most failed resolutions don't answer is, why did I fail? Now, most people struggle with this because it does require some vulnerability, but if you don't answer this question, you are literally wasting your time when it comes to goal setting. You're just going to bang your head, get frustrated, and end up giving up in February like everyone else. And that brings me on to reason number 2 why people fail. And that's because they're setting unrealistic goals and expectations. Now, this falls under 2 headings. The first is impatience. We live in an instant generation. Everyone wants things now. Coffee, noodles, deliveries, you name it. We can't wait for things. We want things instantly. The problem with this is that some things just take time. And under this heading, a lot of people look at successful people, thinking that success leaves clues, and they try and emulate the traits of successful people. Now, this is a good idea, but what we often miss out is the timeline that these successful people took to develop those traits. So you might look at someone who's in shape and think, oh, that person does 12,000 steps a day, let me copy them. But the reality is, you're currently struggling to do 3,000 steps. So how on earth do you think you're going to stick to 12,000 steps a day consistently? Chances are you're not. What would be better is you setting something like 6,000 steps and sticking at that consistently. And the second part of unrealistic expectations is, do you actually have what it takes to achieve said goal? We get swept up in this whole positive thinking, social media, I can do anything I put my mind to mentality, and I actually think this can be quite dangerous. Just because I think I'm the fastest man in the world doesn't mean that I'm the fastest man in the world, and I can try my hardest, but that area that I'm trying to achieve in could actually be an area that I have limitations in, and I need to stay in my lane and accept this. Everyone has their strengths, everyone has their weaknesses. The question you need to ask yourself is, are you trying to thrive in an area where you naturally have limitations? Because if you are, in 99% of cases, you are very unlikely to achieve unless you get external help. You can want to produce Van Gogh-like art, but if you're currently drawing stickmen, you're probably not going to get very far. So be humble and honestly appraise yourself. Moving on to point number 3 as to why most people fail their resolutions, and that is the lack of a proper game plan. Truth be told, most people are completely winging it, and this is why they fail. Now, I always tell my clients that there are 2 ways to tell whether or not you're winging it. The first way is that you have a shoddy plan A and don't have a proper plan B. And that's because a lot of people go into their resolutions thinking that everything is going to go swimmingly, when in reality, it's life. Things go wrong, you're going to encounter curveballs, and if you're not prepared for something to go wrong, you're going to end up encountering a bump in the road, getting discouraged, and then giving up by February. The second way to tell whether or not you're winging it is figuring out whether you've been successful in said area, and have you managed to stay successful. Otherwise, it's important to consult someone who has actually been successful in that area. And that is because without succeeding yourself, you don't really know what success looks like and you don't really know how to get there. A big mistake people make is underestimating what it takes to achieve said goal. I always tell my clients that it's like someone who climbs a 10-foot wall in a gym, thinking that because they climb that wall, that they can suddenly climb Everest. It's a completely different kettle of fish and it needs a completely different preparation. And the final reason why people fail their resolutions is the lack of accountability. Think back to all the times that you've either failed or given up on your New Year's resolutions, and think back to how many of those times that you were accountable to someone. Probably not very many. Going back to the question that I asked in the first point, why do people fail their resolutions? This is kind of linked to accountability. The truth is, as humans, we can't often see our blind spots. So if you were to list your weaknesses and you were to ask your friends and family, what do you think my weak points are? You might find that you get back different answers. And because of these blind spots, people are often dropping the ball in areas that they're not even aware of. And this is where accountability can be crucial. Having an objective pair of eyes, someone who is not you or biased, to call you out in the areas they need to call you out on so that you can improve. And I always remind my clients that this is why you have a boss at work. It's not because you can't do your job or because you don't understand the requirements for the role. It's because someone needs to oversee your work to make sure that you do what you say you'll do, and then they'll check in on you either weekly, monthly, or quarterly. But essentially, there needs to be an objective pair of eyes to review your work. Otherwise, you can go off the rails or completely fail to hit your goals. And it's no different to your resolutions. If you're setting the same goals year after year, they obviously mean something to you. And so when you fail, you are going to end up disappointed. If you are failing at the same hurdles each time, it might be time for you to get accountable. Getting someone objective to call you out in the areas that you drop the ball or the areas that you're weak can make a huge difference to your progress. So yeah, that's it. To summarize, although it's a new year, it's going to be the same old you and the same results unless you do something different. Point number 2, don't run before you can walk. Do you actually have what it takes to achieve said goal? Point number 3, are you winging it or have you been successful in that area? If you're not, consult someone who has been successful, because they'll actually be able to tell you what success looks like and what you need to do to get there. If you don't do this, it massively increases your chances of failure. And point number 4, who are you accountable to? Who's calling you out on your blind spots and who's calling you out when you drop the ball? Trust me, if you can address these 4 things, you are going to see dramatic improvements in your success rate. Final thing I will say, although a lot of these points apply to a person's fitness journey, typically weight loss at the start of the year, these points actually apply to every goal. The principles are universal. If you're someone who is struggling to lose weight and you're setting the same goals year after year and not achieving them, click the link in the description below for more information about coaching. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Don't forget to like it. Comment below, let me know what you think of my new mic. We are leveling up this year. Watch this space. Within the next month or so, there are going to be some significant changes. Please subscribe and I'll see you again soon.